Uh. I'll try an experiment today to introduce episode 12 of 26.1 AI podcast. Normally, we record our intros in a rush before beginning our conversation with a guest. This is the first time I'll revisit the episode and record the intro post interview. Hopefully, this can become an enhancement for our listeners by providing a glimpse of what we cover during the episode. We welcome Michael Agustin for this week's episode. He previously founded Game Salad, a startup that allowed anyone to develop video games using a visual programming interface. For Game Salad, Michael raised 25 million in capital, and investors included impressive organizations like Disney. Currently, Michael is advancing optical AI with current startup Curie. Recently, he finished with the latest batch of 500 startups. Curie offers retailers mobile users cameras as a new channel. Might sound strange, but today I believe you'll listen to our first guest who's truly predictive. Though practitioners of AI inherently are trying to predict rather than react, because of cognitive biases and concepts highlighted by Tversky and Kahneman in their article Judgment Under Uncertainty, Biases and Heuristics, people are biologically geared for reaction, not prediction. Today, Michael provides us our first truly futurist episode. He shares with us optimism that Apple will catch up in AI, takes us through the benefits of AI on chip, and shares with us that better algorithms will catch up to those who hold a huge data advantage. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, Michael, we had a chance to try to record before, and we're taking another round at it. And just a real quick update, what have you been up to lately?
I've been working on a company called Curie, which is doing computer vision for retail. Essentially, what we're doing is we're creating a camera AI assistant that could be used for the over 2 billion smartphones cameras to for shoppers to look up information about different types of products and be able to make decisions on the fly about whether or not they purchase.
So, Michael, AR has been promised to be a solution for many different kind of problems. There are some companies that have famously raised, I think, billions and have yet to really deliver on that promise. Do you think we're ready for AR now?
Yeah, other than the fact that 2020 is the perfect pun for something visually related, um, I think that we're at a point to where we're hitting 5 nanometer in chip size, which will leave a lot more room for batteries. If you think about the latest AirPod Pros or AirPods Pro, that chip is about as powerful as the first iPhones, if not more. Um, and wouldn't be unheard of to start, putting other sensors like cameras or radio on it. Um, I think that with 5G, that'll make it a lot easier to send data back and forth, as well as transport different types of models on the fly. So we'll start to see more of that on the edge, um, not just in cars, but in devices like your phone or a wearable. So I think that a lot of dynamics are getting to a point where battery life is starting to become um, more palatable because chip sizes are decreasing in size, and the amount of connectivity that's occurring through 5G and Starlink would enable a greater range of the type of information that we can pass back and forth between um, sort of a spatial environment and a digital one.
So, what is the challenges that prevent this besides the hardware and the network speed? Is there any aspect of the actual technology regarding the software or the machine learning that's a limiting factor or enabling factor?
Yeah. So, I mean, neural networks uh, would run on a form of GPU. Apple calls it sort of its bionic aspect of the chip. Um, uh, I think that might induce a bit of heat or energy usage, and so those are things that I'm sure device manufacturers are looking to optimize. On the software side, I think that AI is starting to go from something that's science fiction to practical use cases that we can start being able to communicate to uh, folks that are buyers on how that would be useful to help optimize everything from sales to uh, uh, you know supply chain, customer service. So I think that the use cases are starting to become more well understood, and the demand will increase. I think the one way to think about AI is that uh, the way that we used to think of software automating rote tasks, AI can do that on a more granular and scalable level, just because you don't actually have to write software for each edge case. That if you have enough data or the right algorithms, you'd um, be able to match certain types of examples at scale without having to write all that software. And so that's sort of the appeal of being able to use this type of technology.
Can you help me find my wallet? Because I literally left my wallet at home today, and it has not suffered at all. I walk to the train and use my phone to get on the train, and then I go to Amazon Go, and I picked up both my breakfast and lunch there. And it seems like the world's really rapidly changing. I would normally have to run back and get my wallet. Is that AI? Is that AI shopping at Amazon Go, not even needing to check out, and I just put stuff in my bag and I leave? I feel like I'm stealing something, by the way. And also, what's going on with China and their camera system? Is this really as scary as it sounds to us?
Yeah. So to address the first question, computer vision is able to sort of differentiate between different types of people and objects to a point to where uh, you no longer have to scan a barcode for checkout. You are the barcode effectively, and the products on the shelves. In addition, and so I think that that's one way to do it. I'm not quite sure how expensive it might be to retrofit every store in an Amazon Go type manner. But in China, they've found a much cheaper way to do it via markers called QR codes, which stands for quick response. It was originally used in manufacturing and has made its way into commerce, mostly because of the lack of credit cards, the inability to understand, or for consumers there to understand, um, uh, you know, Western type characters and language, and also the fact that in rural areas, many individuals went unbanked. And so those types of trends have led to the QR being adopted as a form of URL for different types of situations. And then combined with mobile, you can start attaching that to individuals' credit cards, bank accounts, and location, and which has made it very ideal for different types of stores to run in a sort of earlier types of use case for what Jack Ma calls new retail. You have like Hema stores, sort of JD stores that are set up like IKEA, as well as sort of precursors to Amazon Go stores, where one person can go into a prefab, store. So like 7-Eleven, one at a time, and check out whatever they want to, um, as long as you have your mobile device.
So, just to clarify for our listeners, I think we should point out that the Amazon Go system is keyed optically. I don't know if everybody knows that. I know when you shared that with me, Michael, I was surprised. Um, but continuing on with China, so Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote the book, I think it was AI Superpowers, he's asserting that China will win in the war for AI supremacy. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Um, I mean, it's kind of yes and no. Obviously, that if you have more data set, such as more people and more behaviors set around data, like new retail and WeChat, and the fact that most of your business is done through a single app, that would enable more training set. Um, and with the addition of the fact that there is a bit less concern amongst the populace, about certain types of privacy and freedom, as well as the push for governments to get involved, um, that it makes it ideal for AI to progress under those circumstances. But at the same time, it's a question of algorithms. If you There are more and better algorithms that are learning to uh, understand the world in a way that humans do, that don't require as much data set. So, for example, if you showed the way that you would train an AI today might be showing them, a million photos of cats. And then if you were to go to a kid and say, hey, here's 3 photos of cats, can you identify a cat? Uh, you would expect the child to understand. If you were to show a million pictures of cats to that individual, then and they still don't get it, then there might be an issue. So I think that the nature of algorithms are changing, and it's a question of whether or not enough of the knowledge economy has shifted over to China, or whether or not much of the innovations are still happening in the United States, where those newer algorithms could potentially trump older methods of data collection.
Sure. And I'd like to go back to your mentions of Apple. I'm interpreting you as saying Apple probably has an edge for AI on chip. Um, However, some of the practitioners at Apple, or what I've heard through the grapevine, is Apple is very famously locked down for privacy. So even though they have this hardware advantage, they have some difficulty because of what you brought up with the China example. They have a lot of
Yeah,
data and they have more access to it.
yeah,
You have any thoughts on that with Apple and what their challenges are going to be as they are really trying to catch up, I think?
yeah. So Apple has 2 types of innovation that it's going for it. One is miniaturization. They're one of the first to deploy 5 nanometer, which could potentially leave more room for the battery, as well as faster compute. Um, and they're also investing a lot in CoreML, which enables AI to run and be trained on device. Um, and so, with these sort of edge-based technologies, you're able to kind of keep uh, a certain level of intelligence and performance without having to give up on privacy necessarily, because no human is looking at it. The information stays on one's device. Um, uh, and as I said, with newer algorithms, they could potentially overcome the fact that you need lots of data in order to train these types of AI. Uh, that said, they're, part of it is kind of positioning. You know, one could say that they're trying to turn their weakness into a talking point. Um, you know, Apple doesn't have a lot of interest in advertisement, and therefore doesn't keep a lot of information to better target individuals. And so its business depends a lot less on having information on the cloud than, say, Facebook, Amazon, or Google. And so, because of that, they're trying, one could also say that they're trying to turn a form of weakness and something that they may not be as adept at in terms of data set into a strength. Because I think that ergonomics and politics can potentially trump technology. Um, it's very difficult to sort of change human behavior and how humans interact with technology. And Apple has a strength in terms of keeping and mind share, uh, being able to design technologies that fit the human body a bit better and is more comfortable over time uh, and fit within one's life. And by controlling having the ear of, say, the president or other news sectors on being a um, champion of certain types of issues, they're able to uh, keep their brand in high regard when it comes to decision making of individual shoppers.
Yeah, I couldn't help but ask about your daily life, your personal daily life. I vision you being completely surrounded by IoT devices and highly entrenched, and with a Fitbit. And by the way, that was just purchased by Google last week. What is your daily life like? Is it really like that, or are you different from what it seems?
Um, so I mean, I am one of those types that would actually prefer there be a lot less technology. uh, my girlfriend does use a Fitbit, and she does track pretty regularly. And I think it's more of the gamification side that intrigues her about it. It is of concern that that data could be potentially misused for targeting individuals that have certain like eating or behavioral habits. But I imagine that technology could potentially become more invisible. Almost think of like Thor, or how if a human from the future would show something of the past, someone in the past, like a piece of technology, they would think of it as magic. Um, I I like the idea of ambient or invisible computing. The fact that you would wear less technology and it's less in your way. And just like in Thor, you almost can kind of consider him a futuristic Iron Man, where there is technology. It's just that it's not something that you have to think about, or it's in your face, or it's ergonomic enough that there's not as many like sensors or UI that gets in your way. You just use it intentfully. So I kind of see technology moving more in that direction in order to reach more individuals, where you don't really think about using it, you just do. Information is and services potentially could be more serendipitous, and that the need to surround yourself with all different types of technology could potentially go away with better sensors like Soli, where it doesn't need a direct line of sight or a direct access to vocal commands in order to be used. It could just fit in your pocket or somewhere invisible, and you would just be able to start using it and perform services just like you would, you know, Doctor Strange would call from particular spell. So, um, I don't know. We'll see if that type of technology will be more appealing to people, or if we'll just go more towards a blend of I don't know, like cyborgism, of where that other aspect would become more acceptable to society.
Michael, your storyteller motif is a good segue into what you've been busy with. Curie, post 500 startups, is finishing out your fundraising round, and you're telling a story about Curie AR and AI to investors. And I'm curious in terms of how fluent those investors are when you're explaining what you're doing in the state of AI.
Yeah, I think that in terms of anyone that's involved in finance, they understand numbers, and the dynamics of certain type of sort of operations. But I don't know if I can't speak for other people in terms of what they know in terms of artificial intelligence and technology. Um, so I think that the way one has to look to communicate, or one of the benefits, what are some concrete examples of how it can be, how these technologies can be used, and what benefits there are, opportunities in terms of how this is different than what's before. Um, so, for example, with Curie, we're looking to make the world shoppable, and I think the big idea behind us is that um, if you can see it, then you can interact with it, and that's the promise of computer vision. So by looking at different types of um, devices that are coming out, that leaves more opportunity to connect companies, brands, services, and commerce to consumers and users at an unprecedented level. Um, you can almost think of it as uh, you know Google Maps, street maps, cameras being sent through individual spaces, and being able to take that information and turn it into something that is interactable and usable. So there's been different types of terms that have been used to try to describe this new type of interface. Um, I think one of my favorites is spatial, because it uh, harks back to the idea of geospatial. But I think that's a promise that, if you look at how we went from punch cards to command line, and then command line to the graphical user interface, to GUIs, to touch, and then now you have the ability to kind of leave the screen. Um, that is a whole new type of world that uh, might be unfamiliar to folks that live outside sort of science fiction. Um, and having access to a few OEMs, one could potentially disrupt all sorts of businesses that require traditional real estate or space. So advertising and retail, uh, and things that require people to be in certain places to be able to communicate an idea could potentially just be disrupted, because now anything can be present anywhere at any time on any product or person, with any information, service, or uh, you know or transaction um, taking place in between. So I think that right now we kind of think as augmented reality as a form of visualization, where I can put one object onto another, but you're just sort of discounting how we use the web. for all sorts of informational and transactional purposes that could now be applied. And so, uh, I'm pretty excited for the opportunities that the prevalence of these types of sensors will be able to bring to society, and how that would potentially change the way we think about access of information when we're on the go.
This has been fantastic, and I'm so glad we got back together to record again because the first one was a bit of a technology disaster. Um, any closing remarks or anything you want to leave the audience with?
Write checks for Curie.
Yeah, so I think what brought my previous startup a bit of success was being at the knee of the curve to a platform shift. So I'm excited about the platform shift that is coming. We've been waiting for this opportunity since almost 2007 when the first iPhone came out. And I think that it's going to lead to all new types of businesses and startups that will be as new and as interesting as what Uber was to Expedia.